Hello, this is Justin Seven with sportsbookreview.com. This week I have an interesting complaint and investigation against Shilbet. On June 10th there was a soccer match between Ecuador and Argentina, and a player filed a complaint here. You can tell he's not an English speaker, but the gist of his complaint is that he bet $370 on Ecuador to win the game at odds of 4.0. Ecuador won the game 2-0, and his wager was later graded as a loss. And Shilbet graded the wager as though the final score were 0-0. I contacted Shilbet to find out, what happened here. Was this just a misgrading error? And they responded that no, this was actually a first half wager and not a wager for the game. And that makes sense, right? When you see these kind of mistakes, more often than not, it's a player mistake and not a book grading mistake. But the player insisted that he did not bet the game, so I went ahead and looked further. Several other players in the forum had similar issues with Shilbet, though. They thought they had a game bet, and they found out that their bet on Ecuador lost, and it turned out it was graded as a halftime bet. And if you look at, like for instance, this ticket here, you'll see there's the notes 2,8. And Shilbet explained that this 8 signifies it was a halftime bet. When I told the players about Shilbet's explanation, they said no, they are certain they did not make a first half bet, and I was pointed to the odds for the game. And if you look at the odds from Odds Explorer for the game, you'll see that the odds from Odds Explorer were 4.0 for Ecuador, 3.1 for the tie, and 1.7 for Argentina. That's full game odds for Shilbet. And it's the same odds that were being offered on all these wagering tickets. So not only did all the players believe that this was a game bet, but the odds tracking sites believed that these were the odds for a full game bet also. At this point, I would assume one of two things happened. Either Shilbet's site was horrendously mislabeled, such that most of the people looking at the site and the odds tracking sites thought this was a game line instead of a halftime line, or possibly something worse happened. There's some pretty compelling evidence that this was not a first half line. If you look at the wagering tickets we had, all of them had the tie paying at 3.1. Now the market price for a first half tie, which happens a lot more frequently than a game tie, was about half that, at about 2.1. If they were offering 3.1 on a game line, which actually was pretty close to the market for the tie, you would have had tons of people betting the tie, and they would have gotten buried, or they would have just canceled as a bad line. But that's not the issue here. From their ticket looks as though it's the normal odds for a game line and not a halftime line. When I look at all the factors, there are about 5 players on the forums who had an issue with this one game. There was another player who posted on the forum who said that Shilbet had changed one of his prior wagers from a game time to a halftime to make it a loser. And we look at the odds histories, where the odds histories say this was a game line. And from a book manager's perspective, it would be irrational to offer a halftime line of double the market price for a tie. All these factors taken together suggest this was not just a simple mislabeling, that there was something worse going on here. I don't know if Shilbet went back and changed the wagers, or a more likely explanation would be Shilbet put up a line thinking they were using full game odds and they accidentally put it as a halftime line. But whatever they did, there's fault here on Shilbet, and they're not making this right. Until they make this right, I don't know if you want to call it a fraud or gross negligence on bookmaker management, but I would not touch this book with a 10-foot pole. That's all for this week. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email at justin@sportsbookreview.com.